Hi everyone, and welcome to this next video in our Flash game design series. Wow, we're starting to get some really cool action script. In fact, look at my file now. If I can just drag some of this stuff up, I'll show you all of the different action script I've got here. Boom, boom, boom. But look at all this code. Every line of code has some purpose. But man, it's getting pretty long now. In fact, it's getting so long, I'm kind of forgetting what each line of code does. So I've decided just to introduce a comment above each block of code to remind me what is the purpose of this code. And to do a comment, you just put 2 forward slashes and then you can start typing. This is just a comment. It doesn't change the code in any way, okay? So this line of code here simply moves the player paddle in the game. And do you remember we had an if statement here which moves the player paddle, the computer paddle. And this is what we were looking at in the last tutorial. So this is currently what my game looks like. So I can move the player paddle. The computer paddle is moving at a fixed speed, up and down. It's trying to follow the Y coordinate of the ball. So as the ball goes up, the computer paddle goes up, and as the ball goes down, the computer paddle goes down. Okay? And at this gentle speed, the computer paddle never loses. Okay? But if I change the ball speed, let's just make it a little bit quicker. The ball speed is now going to be faster. Let's see if the computer paddle can keep up with that. You lose. Okay. You lose. Okay. Ooh, I think it lost again. Oh, lucky. It got that one. And you lose. So when we speed up the ball, the computer paddle really has a hard time. It's almost like we're cheating now because it's getting a bit easier for us to win. Although, you know, the player still has to try and get that ball, and it's traveling quickly. Ooh, it's tricky. And to make the game a little bit even trickier, I changed the size of my player paddle just to make it a little bit narrower. Anyway. So, what we want to do to make the game fairer is... Well, before we start talking about that, let me just introduce something else to you. Check out this line of code. Do you remember that my player paddle, I decided to call it player? Player dot hit test object, open some brackets, ball. Whoa, check out that code. If we test whether or not the player object has hit the ball object. If that situation is true, I'm going to reverse the x speed of my ball. Multiply by -1. So we know this trick for reversing the x direction of the ball. We just multiply it by -1. So if the player paddle hits the ball, if that is true, we are going to reverse the direction of the ball. Let's just test that, see if it works. This is the player paddle. Boom! Oh, I got my first hit. Did you see that? Whey! Boom! It's working. Let's just slow this down a little bit. It's going very fast, isn't it? And let's do the same for the computer paddle. If computer dot hit test object, notice that becomes blue. ActionScript understands what's going on here. It understands that we're trying to compare the location of 2 objects on our game area. And if they're in the same location, that kind of means they're hitting each other. If that is true, then we will simply reverse the x speed of the ball. And now the computer paddle is also hitting the ball. And when the ball is traveling slowly like this, the computer paddle always hits it back. It never loses. So that game's going to be a little bit boring for the player. But if we speed up the ball, Oh, the player paddle got that one. the player paddle lost. Oh, it got that one. It didn't get that one. I didn't get that one. The player paddle is struggling now. In fact, I'm struggling as well. Oh, it missed it again. So when we speed the ball up, the computer paddle isn't winning many of the points. So the game has kind of become unfair. However, we do want the ball to sometimes be fast, because, well, I need points. Does that make sense? So sometimes we want the speed of the ball to be slow, and sometimes we want it to be fast during game play time, and that will make the game more interesting. So if the player paddle hits the ball, I would love to be able to also change the Y speed. But instead of giving it a fixed number, like 3, I would love to give it a random number between, let's say, 1 and 6. So sometimes the Y speed is 1, sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 6. That variety of speed will make the game more interesting. So we need to figure out how to get a random number in ActionScript, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. To help you understand how this works, I'm just going to create a new Flash file, and in the first frame on layer 1, I'm just going to set up a little bit of code. Don't worry if this doesn't look meaningful for you. So I'm going to set up a variable called number, and it has a type of, it's an integer. And I'm going to say that number is equal to math.random. And to help me see what has been placed inside this variable by doing this, I'm going to use a function called trace. And this is going to help me to see what's inside the number variable. So when I run my code, the random number that's generated is 0. And if I run my code again, what? I get 0 again? Really? I tell you what if we take our random number and multiply that by 5? And let's run the program again. We get a 0 again, really? I thought we'd get another number. Oh, this time we get a 4. Brilliant. Let's run it again. This time we get a 0. Okay. Let's see if we get any other numbers. Oh, a 0 again. That's interesting. Then we get a 1. Let's just run the program again. Then we get a 4. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna introduce something else to you, which is a little bit weird, but don't worry too much if you don't understand it. I'm going to set up another variable called loop, and I'm going to do these 2 lines of code 10 times. For loop equals 0 to loop is less than 10, loop plus plus. And we'll do all of that. So basically I've set up a for loop, which means these 2 lines of code are going to happen 10 times. So let's run the program. Yay! So this random number generator, this random number thing here, it first gave me a random number of 2, and then it gave me 3 zeros, and then it gave me some 1s, and then a 3. These are all random numbers. The range looks to be 0 to 4. I'm not seeing any 5s in there. So let's close that, and let's change that to 6. And let's run the program again. Still not getting any 5s. That's weird. Let's run that again. Oh, there we get a 5. So we're getting random numbers now. The range is 0 to 5. Okay? So that might be useful for my game. Brilliant. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that bit of code there, math.random multiplied by 6, and I'm going to use that to update the Y speed of my ball every time we do this hit test object. The first thing I'm going to do is reverse the speed on the x-axis, and then I'm going to give the y speed a new value, which is a random number. And let's do the same when the computer paddle hits the ball. Now let's see if we can see what's going on here. Ooh, did you see that? The player paddle lost that one. And it got that one. But we can see now that the player paddle is not always winning. It lost that one as well. So the y speed of the ball is changing, and that's making it more challenging for the player and the computer paddle. Okay? So get into your program and see if you can incorporate these two blocks of code here using the hit test object function, which Flash understands because it's blue, and also we're going to update the y speed with a random number. And feel free to play with the range. This gives me a range of 0 to 5. What happens if I change that to 10? Well, that's going to give me a range of 0 to 9. What happens if I add 1 onto that? So there's some things that you can play with there as you're trying to make your game the best game that it can be. Have a go.